I was watching the opening of the Olympics the other day. Anybody get up at 3 a.m. for that? Good. Just checking. We did tape it though and watched it Friday morning, and it was pretty awesome, and watched it again, parts of it again Friday night. I am an Olympic groupie. I love the Olympic game, and I am not a jock. Right? I seldom watch sports. I'll watch the occasional hockey game if my father is not screaming, which he usually does during hockey games. So, growing up it was touch and go. But the Olympics, I will always watch as much as I can get. And I think the biggest reason is, and contrast this with what we had the week before in the Super Bowl, at the Olympics, we've got the world coming together. I know it costs millions and millions of dollars that could certainly be used other ways, except I think it's worth every penny to bring people from 91 countries this time around into one place to play together. I really do. And it's for the little things. It's like when the president of South Korea walked into the stadium, and when he noticed Kim Jong-un's sister from North Korea, even though he wasn't supposed to do this, he stopped and he turned around and he shook her hand, and they smiled at each other. Now that ain't much. One man shaking one woman's hand. Wow. Except that could be everything. And if that moment alone prevents one missile from going somewhere and killing people and starting World Wars 3, 4, 5, or whatever, it is worth every penny to have those games. So I like to watch them. And I love the opening ceremony. It takes me back. The first opening ceremony of the Olympic Games I ever watched, I will not tell you my age, but it was in 1968. They were in Mexico City. That's a long time ago. And I tried to remember all the different places they'd been since there, and I got most of them, missed a few. But I watch them because there's a link to the past and the future there as well, all right? Because as I'm watching them, I'm thinking back to other ones that I've watched. I'm thinking back to 1972 in Munich, how that changed us of our generation. I think of how in 1948, German athletes went to London not very long after the war, along with lots of people from other places. But I imagine there must have been an incredible amount of tension at those games. But they did it. I think of Jesse Owens winning that race in 1936 and frustrating Adolf Hitler probably more than anything else in history. It was a few seconds, but it was a few seconds that changed an awful lot. I thought, too, of recent history. It was interesting to see the Olympic athletes from Russia walk in with the Olympic flag. And on the one hand, we all know they're the Russian team, but on the other hand, we know that they're athletes who have been brought down a peg because the International Olympic Committee said to their country, "You've done something wrong. We need to reprimand you. You can still come and play, but you can't quite do it on the same level as you've done it other times." And I'm sure that's having a big effect in Russia. It's having an effect in other places as well. It's important. And lastly, for those who watched it, you will have noted those 5 children. Conveniently, by the way, 5 trivia points if you notice that they were wearing, each of them, the Olympic colors. Nice touch. I kept waiting for them to form the rings, but they didn't. But it was intriguing to see that. And they started by looking at ancient Korean history. And at the end, through the magic of cameras, they became adults doing things with high-tech stuff. The past, the ancient past, and the present and the future. That's so important for us as human beings. Sometimes we miss that, but it's so important for us to link our past and our future, or else we will not get through the present very well. I want to show you a picture. Well, Greg's going to show you a picture. Isn't that a great picture? Isn't that an awesome picture? Thank you, Ralph. Except you're all looking at that, and except for a small handful who may know, you're just looking at it going, well, it's a baby, whatever, right? You are all noting it is the most attractive baby you've ever seen. I recognize that. But beyond that, it's just a baby. Hold it up there. Hold that thought. I'm going to come back to that. We read this story of Jesus and the disciples going up a mountaintop. Jesus and his closest friends, right? It's not the whole group of 12. It's just Peter, James, and John, who are sometimes there for those really special times with Jesus, those really important, vital, theologically intimate moments. They're there. And they go up this mountain. And once I stopped taking this story literally, I realized this is probably factually one of the most accurate stories we have in the whole Bible. This is an incredibly important story. Because they go up this mountain. Now, it happens at an important point in the scripture. This is helpful to know. It happens as Jesus is going into Jerusalem. And in those pre-Facebook days, you can get away with an awful lot in the countryside. Can't do that anymore, but you could do that then, right? And Jesus has been traveling around talking about God's love and how God's love has come for everybody, even the other people, whoever they might be. And in the countryside, that's rankled a few feathers, but that's as far as it's gotten. But Jesus knows, and anybody reading that story knows, that once he starts sharing that message in Jerusalem, it will be game over. And in Mark's gospel, it's game over very quickly. That message does not last because it angers the whole world. So Jesus takes his disciples up a mountaintop, and they don't know what they've seen. And we get this story written years later by somebody who, as Ralph and Mackenzie showed to us, is trying to recollect what they might have seen, and too much has happened since then and all of that. But basically in that story, the past is there to remind them that God is there now, and God is going to be there. You see, you're just, back to young Cora, please. Thank you. Her name, by the way, is Cora Nottingham. Isn't that a great name? Cora's my granddaughter. Cora's a whopping 3 weeks old in that picture. Rufus the Beagle has decided this is his baby. No one except her mother has gotten anywhere near her without Rufus going... Hasn't bitten anyone yet, April says, but he growls. Now, I look at that picture, and you see, I see my son, I see my daughters, I see my kids when they were younger, and I see April's mother, Cora, after whom the baby's named, because Cora died a couple years ago. And I imagine some of the places she's going to go and some of the things that she's going to do. And I imagine all of that because I'm seeing all these people around her. You don't see them, do you? Because they're not there for you, but they're there for me. And they're very, very, very real. Okay, it's enough of Corey. You can switch now to the other picture. We need that past to get through now, to get to tomorrow. And that's why God talks to us. And that's why we are reminded that God is here with us. We're moving into Lent. Now, Francis and I were having a great conversation the other day. Sorry, Francis, I try not to tell people about things that happen but it's a safe one. We're having a church business meeting where we were planning music for Lent, and I was talking about the church year. And I said, I really like the church year and the different seasons, except some of it is just dumb. I'm sorry, but it is. There's some days and some seasons and things, and I'm like, who cares about that anymore? It might have made sense at one point. I'm not so sure it does anymore, but whatever. But Lent, to me, is such a wonderful season. Because we're getting ready for Easter. And Easter is the most wonderful day for us because Easter is a celebration of something that happened a long time ago, except it's happening right now. And we're celebrating that it lasts long into eternity. We're celebrating God's love that came in Jesus of Nazareth, and his love for us, and his love that is not going away. And that's what Easter is about. And we know that. And because we know that, we have these weeks of Lent where we can go, yeah, but what if? And we can wonder about ourselves. We can dare to do that. It's like a 2-year-old, right? We all know about the terrible twos. And if you've forgotten having children with the terrible twos, don't worry, you'll get it back when they're teenagers as well. And there are really, really, really important reasons why we do those rebellion things. We do a big one at 2, and we do another one when we're teenagers. It's because we know that mom and dad love us. They've been telling us that. They've been showing us that. We get that. But I kind of got to make sure. Now, no 2-year-old is thinking it through this way. But what they're thinking basically is, I want to test that and make sure you really do love me. So I'm going to kick you, and I'm going to tell you I hate you, and I'm going to throw tantrums and do all those things that make you want to, they make you want to strangle me, but you're going to hug me at the end of the day. And I have to do that because I have to know that you really do love me. Teenagers are doing the same thing, right? I hate your rules. Please give me more rules, is really what they're saying. Easter is the hug at the end of the day from God. And because we know that's going to be there, Lent is not really the time of protest, but Lent is the time to go, what if? What if I walked away? What would happen? That's what the Corinthian church was facing, right, when Paul is writing to them. Paul's writing to a church that's been having ups and downs and ins and outs because they tried this Christianity thing. There are an awful lot of other really cool religions out there at the time. There's some pretty nifty stuff that they're hearing about. And, Jesus is kind of like far away and he's dead and, whatever. And Paul is far away and, he sends us letters, but yeah, whatever. And there's so much other stuff going on and so many other temptations, and the new and improved and cool religion is out there. And so maybe Christianity, we tried it. Let's try, the new flavor this week. And Paul could give up on them. But he doesn't. He doesn't because he can't. Just like Jesus can't give up on us. There are so many times I read scripture and I'm going, God, I don't know why you didn't go to Mars. I don't know why you didn't walk away from us and go, I've had it with those rebellious people. But God never does that. Never, ever, ever does that. And so we can wonder for a while, what would happen if? What if God weren't here? What if I walked away? What if God didn't love me? Because we know where we're going to end up at the end of Lent. One time, close with this story, I was thinking about Dave Barrett last weekend, the former premier. I know everyone here has moved from either Edmonton or Winnipeg. Very few people here are actually from Kelowna, but the few who are, or from BC in general, will perhaps remember Dave Barrett. Because he was premier for a very, very short time, 3 years. He also did an incredible amount in those 3 years, but it was very controversial, and whether you liked Dave Barrett or not, you will, I think, admit he certainly had a lasting effect on a lot of people, whether you liked him or not, because he shot from the hip, very much so. In 1976, right, the NDP had lost the previous election. He was no longer premier, and it had been a pretty crushing defeat. The Social Credit Party had won. Dave Barrett had lost his own seat. He'd just been re-elected in Vancouver East, but it had been really difficult, et cetera, et cetera. And the NDP was having their convention. And at their convention, a very sort of bruised and battered Dave Barrett is trying to rally these people who are feeling pretty defeated. And he said, remember this. This is not an exact quote, but it's 99% there because I remember what he said afterwards. He said, remember this. If you believe in the right thing and you hang in there, it will happen. So afterwards, there's a reporter. This is back in the days when reporters have to write things down, if you can imagine, with pens. And this reporter missed it, and so another reporter is telling reporter number 2 what he'd said, right? And they said, yeah, he said, if you believe in the right thing and you hang in there, you'll win. And Dave Barrett was like way over here, and he turned around and he came whopping over to that reporter, and he said, no, that's not what I said. What I said was, if you believe in the right thing and you hang in there, the right thing will happen. And of course, he's right. Right? Sometimes it'll happen for us, but not always, but it will happen. It will happen. That's what Jesus wants these disciples to get from this story. That's what Jesus wants us to get from this story. That it doesn't matter because God will be there. No matter what, God will be there. Amen. Let us sing together. We have come at Christ's own bidding, which will be on the screens or Voices Unite.